Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donna Pollard, and I am the founder and community enrichment officer for Survivors Corner. We are a grassroots nonprofit based in Louisville, Kentucky, although we have performed advocacy work across our nation. We started back in 2017 with a mission to empower survivors of various forms of abuse and trauma in a manner that would help them to deepen their own healing and then to transform that trauma into purpose through work on policy, education, and other realms that survivors can really reclaim their power. We are thrilled to be able to present to you today an event based on a Speak Out panel. We have some amazing survivors who have gone through our Speaking Out Safely workshop series, and they will be sharing a bit about their own personal experience with you, and then we will end up sharing a little bit more about Survivors Corner and where we're looking to continue taking our efforts. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Kim, if you would like to go ahead and get started, feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. I appreciate that. My name is Kim Summers, and I really like what Donna said, the fact that we can take those experiences, and once we tap into healing those experiences and remembering the truth of who we really are, we can take that healing and use it for good in the world, which is, I think, the highest form of existence here in this human experience. So thank you, Donna. Thank you, Survivors Corner. So much growth has happened within me as a result. So back in 1965, my mom was pregnant with me, 6 months pregnant with me, and attended a Christmas Eve dinner at my grandparents' house. My aunt was there. She saw my mom's head wrapped in a scarf. My mom doesn't wear scarves on her head. And upon further investigation, my aunt saw bruises, bumps, lumps on my mother and realized how much abuse was happening while she was pregnant. When I came out of the womb, I was a baby that my mom said she just didn't understand what was wrong with me because I would just bang my head. I was angry, and I was highly, highly sensitive. Looking back on it now, I understand it was the trauma that I experienced in utero. And what I found is I heal as I'm willing to give compassion to myself and show compassion to myself. So my mother remarried when I was 2 years old to another abusive alcoholic, and the abuse continued. I was the oldest child. My mom and my dad had 2 children, 2 daughters, that would hide under the bed when my beatings would happen. At 13 years old, I began to act out, and I began to fight back because I was tired and I snapped. Some people would call it. I was suicidal. I held up a knife, threatening to kill myself in the kitchen of my home. And then I became the problem. The focus was on me, and that Kim, I just don't know what's wrong with her. So I took all that in, and thought that I was such a problem. And self-loathing was a part of my existence. I hated myself. And I called myself fatally flawed. I use those words about myself, fatally flawed, because I thought that I was so broken that I would never heal, that I couldn't be repaired. I used the reasoning that because this happened in utero, it started in utero, while I was being formed in my mother's womb, that I was so damaged that why go on? So I turned to drugs. I left out a part. I was institutionalized. After I threatened to kill myself, my parents put me in the county hospital in Tampa, Florida, where I felt safe. It was an institution, but I felt safe. I knew that there wouldn't be beatings. I knew that the yelling, the threats wouldn't be going on. So although it was an institution, I felt safe. I was there for 3 holidays that I remember. I was there for Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So I know, looking back on it, I was there at least that length of time. So I went back to my home, and it got worse. It just got worse. You know, my stepfather's drinking escalated. The beatings escalated. So when I was 15 years old, no, I was almost 15 years. I was months shy of 15 years old. Church that I was raised in came to pick me up for our date at 14 years old. He was 18. Very kind, very tender, very loving person. Gratefully, I can say that. So he walked in on one of the beatings, and my head was being slammed against the wall. I was being thrown across the room, and he became my knight in shining armor. His name was John. And he took me to his parents' home, where 3 months later, as soon as I turned 15, I got married. With a permission slip from my mother, literally, like a permission slip you'd write when your child's absent from school. With a permission slip, my mother gave her permission for me to get married. We drove to Jasper, South Carolina, because that was the closest state that would marry me at 15. We went to, I'll never forget it, Thelma Thorpe, Justice of the Peace in South Carolina. We were married, and we stayed married for 2.5 years. And I think that that was really the beginning of my reflection and my healing, realizing I didn't want to live like this anymore, this self-loathing that I had. I wanted something different. Surely there was something more. Surely there was something that could soothe this hole, this pain that I felt. So I turned to drugs. I got hooked on crack, and it was very readily available in Tampa, Florida, where I was. And the crack started after I divorced my husband. And then it was alcohol. Then it was relationships. You know, all of these addictions, always trying to find something out there to fill the void in here. So, religion. I was addicted to religion too, thinking that that could fill the void. Growing up in the Pentecostal church, it was a cult. It was definitely a cult. But I knew that religion soothed me somehow, and it was the music of the Pentecostal church. I mean, it was like hand clapping and foot stomping. And so I remembered that I felt some sense of joy in the church. So what did I do after a breakup that just devastated me? By the way, I'm gay. So being married to John for those 2.5 years was very, very, felt like a performance. I was not being my true self. So after the divorce, I had an affair with a woman and hated myself for that. So what did I do? I joined Jehovah's Witnesses because I knew that maybe they could help me not be gay. Looking back on it now, it's like trying to change the color of my eye, or trying to change, something about me that is innately me. So I dealt with that also, the torment of being gay. After Jehovah's Witnesses, I joined the New Thought movement of unity. because it felt positive, it felt uplifting. It teaches us the New Thought movement, of which Unity is a part of, teaches us the power of positive thinking. So I got real addicted to positive thinking and became a real spiritual, I was very spiritually arrogant. I had this attitude of just focus on the light and you will be okay. Of course, that was masking my own pain again. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't healing because I kept focusing on the positive, like I was interpreting them to tell me. I was focusing on the positive. So why do I still feel this pain, this loneliness, this really desire not to really live? And then I found meditation, specifically contemplative prayer meditation that was taught by the Catholic mystics. I mean, who knew there were Catholic mystics? I didn't know that. I'm not Catholic, but I recognize that I learned a lot. I learned a lot from the meditation. And the two lines that there's a welcoming prayer, and it helps me remember that there's the original me, the perfect baby, the perfect little embryo. That was me. And it helped me remember that that's who I really am. I'm not this separated self that people have told me I am. I'm not. Let me say this. The more I became compassionate with myself, the more I aligned with the truth of who I really am. And that happened because I leaned in instead of turning away. The two lines in the meditation and the welcoming prayer say, I lovingly watch my ego let go of its desire for security, affection, and control. And I embrace that real me. I embrace this moment exactly as it is. So I would just meditate on those two lines over and over and over again, and realized that my healing happened by turning towards the pain, not turning away from the pain. By leaning into it, not getting sucked up into it and wallowing in it, but leaning into it with deep compassion for myself. So I lovingly watch my ego let go of its desire for security, affection, and control. And I realized that egoic self, that wounded self, tried to meet those very natural needs of security, affection, and control. Those are very natural needs, but the egoic, wounded self would tell me how to do it and how to go about doing it. So I learned again to lean into the pain and let myself feel the feelings, and recognizing that as I feel the feelings, they pass through. You know, after I felt grief, and I continue my work, I'm still, this is a lifelong journey. But as I lean into the grief that I have, as I lean into the sorrow, it becomes compassion. Not only does it become compassion for me, it becomes compassion, like radical compassion for my abusers. It's like I realized, I set up a little shrine it is a shrine, like an altar, a little picture of my stepfather when he was a little boy, and a picture of my mother when she was a little girl. And I saw them as innocents. I saw them also as wounded little children. So that compassion for self became radical compassion for others. I have my boundaries, certainly, with those that have caused such harm. But the compassion allows me to still have some degree of relationship with them. And that's what Survivor's Corner is doing for me, helping me remember to lean into those feelings and to document those feelings, to write those feelings down, Because when we validate those feelings and those emotions that we have, those emotions of heartbreak, those emotions of woundedness, when we embrace that, we're able to heal that. So when we reveal it, we heal it. So I'm so grateful for my continued path of healing, my continued journey. And I'm so very grateful for Survivor's Corner for giving me voice, for honoring my voice. And there's such healing in telling our stories. There's such healing in that and being witnessed in telling our stories. So if any of this resonates with you, please reach out to Survivor's Corner. If you'd like to, and I'm going to put in a plug, if you'd like to donate to Survivor's Corner, go to survivorscorner.org and donate what you can. This is powerful work, and it's helping heal our community so that we can go out and do good in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was incredible. I really appreciate all of your insights.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So am I turning it over to Tina now, am I not? All right, Tina, take it away.
It is awesome to follow you, Kim, because I agree with so much of what you have found at Survivor's Corner. So my name is Tina Durbin. I live in Lexington, and in 2014, when I was living my most aligned self and turning 50, I met the imposter of my life. I met a man who was a narcissistic sociopath. I did not even know what that was. So while I was being true to who I am, and I was discovering the things that I was passionate about, racial justice, giving voice to the marginalized, I met a man who was mirroring everything about me. But I saw it as someone who wanted to be that power couple, that power couple to change the world. And so as I worked harder in the community, and as I worked harder at home, and as I worked harder in my life, I wasn't getting anywhere, except I found myself crying every day, and I found myself shut down. I found myself being much more quiet than ever in my life and shrinking almost into non-existence. He finally moved to Lexington, and we moved in together. And up until then, I saw some of our struggles as he was living somewhere else. I was living in Lexington. And so we hadn't fully merged yet. And so there were struggles with that. Oh my goodness, I had no idea. Because once we moved in together, the table, this is the only way I can describe it, the table flipped immediately into nothing more than just chaos and confusion. But instead of us working together to figure out how to live together, it was always my fault. I was too sensitive. I was too difficult. I didn't do the dishes right. I didn't do them fast enough. I didn't do them correctly. And so I, again, was crying every day, completely shrinking, and so confused as to what was happening. And for me at that time, domestic violence pretty much in my mind meant there was physical abuse. But in this situation, there was no physical. And it was mainly mental, emotional, intellectual, social, and a great deal of financial. And so again, as I worked harder in the community and I worked harder at home and I worked harder in the relationship, nothing made sense. I finally figured out that something wasn't right, that something was going on. I realized that he was lying, he was cheating, he was doing lots of things that didn't make sense to me, and yet I hung on. This is what we do in a relationship, right? We try to figure it out. We try to make the best of the worst. They're having a bad day. They're having a bad moment. They're having a bad whatever. And then I finally realized that this is who he is. This is what he does. And this is how he operates. And his behavior was very predatory, narcissistic sociopath. So after I left the relationship, I discarded him. I found my voice. I started talking more, but the confusion didn't end and the chaos didn't end. And me trying to figure out the nonsense, I couldn't make sense of it. And I still held on to much of what was comfortable to me. So the house that we lived in together, even though it had been a house of horrors, I held on. I held on and I held on and I held on. And even through all the financial abuse and losing a job, through a lot of the abuse that continued after I discarded him, because one of the things that a narcissist often enjoys is after the relationship is over, the smear campaign, the fun of trying to get you constantly, and the court system. And so as I tried to navigate all those things, I held on to the house and I held on to all that I had known in the relationship. And then finally, I met Survivor's Corner and the people there. And as much as I knew that trauma and abuse was a part of my story, holding on to all the things that were tangible reminders of the abuse started to wane in importance. And then along came the pandemic. And the pandemic furthered the financial trauma that I had already been enduring. And so I wrote a piece on the night that I was basically evicted from that house. And I'm going to read that piece. It's called 1111 Letting Go. And I need to go off camera to read it because I'm on the phone. And so I'm going to switch over to another part of the phone so I can read it. So I'm going to go off camera for a moment. And I'm going to read the piece I wrote that night. It's called 1111 Letting Go. On this night, I write the next chapter of a book I lived and pages I turned, along with memories I burned. Survivors often live in a state of fight or flight. We are fighting so hard in so many ways for so many reasons that we aren't sure at times what we are even fighting for some days. We fight for peace. We fight for understanding. We fight for illusions. We fight for sanity. We fight for what we want. We fight for voice. In flight, we also fight. We fight for peace through silence. We fight for understanding through knowledge. We fight for illusions that seemed like a reality. We fight for sanity as we process. We fight for what we want as we escape. We fight for voice with screams and silence. At the end of the day, we fight for the flight to let go. We let go of blame. We let go of shame. We let go of illusions. We let go of confusion. We let go of chaos. We let go of trauma. We let go of tears. We let go of anxiety. We let go of fear. We let go of change. We simply, over time, let go. Letting go is the culmination of fight and flight. Tonight, I am letting go of a fight to save a reality that never existed. Tonight, I let go of confusion that was nothing more than chaos and confusion twisted. If I can tell you anything about the process of becoming a survivor, know this one thing. The reality of the illusion is the game, and the illusion of the reality is not your blame or shame. Let go of the emotional games of your abuser and work to foster a love of self far greater than any love known on earth. Let an inner guide help find the you that exists among all the twists of a reality you will create for yourself. Survivors survive. Survivors thrive. Survivors let go. Tonight, my fight and flight culminate in letting go. In gratitude, 11:11.
Mm.
With that, I created an endeavor. So I have a call to action. Number one, find Survivor's Corner, because they will help you take your story. And I am not going to use the word reframe or rename it. They help you to own it, live it, and ultimately share it, so that not only will you find your own voice, but you will work to help others find their voice by sharing your own. So I have created an endeavor called 11:11 Messages of Hope from Angels. And this is my piece of jewelry that I created for myself as a survivor. It says, I am enough. It has a dragonfly for self-realization. It has the circle of life, 11:11. Ever since my mother passed away, I see 11:11 everywhere. And it means that angels are watching and that you're on the right path. So I feel as though a piece of me moving forward in my own selfishness towards self-care is I will heal more as I help to heal others. This piece of jewelry is a tangible reminder that I can hold in my hand, and that I can be reminded of my own strength and my own voice as I move forward in the world. And I want to do that for other survivors. But the survivor doesn't pay for the piece. There's one more component, and that is an angel pays for the piece. So I'm looking for survivors who need that reminder. And I'm also looking for angels who will help purchase the piece for that survivor. I have found that angels are survivors themselves at times, that angels are loved ones of survivors. And sometimes I've even found that that angels are loved ones of survivors who lost their life at the hands of an abuser. So 11:11 Messages of Hope from Angels is my own personal endeavor. And through my association with Survivor's Corner, this literally came to me as I found my voice. I'm going to share one more piece that's going out to Survivor. This piece says, and the moon said to me, my darling, you do not have to be whole to shine. So this is another piece that will be going out this upcoming week to a survivor who suffered a traumatic brain injury through her abuse. So that's my story. And I am happy to have had the opportunity to share it with you. If a survivor comes to you, just listen. Don't judge. Don't ask questions, just listen. And if a victim comes to you because they're not yet a survivor, listen even harder and don't judge. And sometimes don't even offer help or advice or support. It's about listening because survivors need to find their own way as they come out of an abusive situation. So, again, thank you for listening. I appreciate Survivors Corner and I appreciate all of you for tuning in. I'm going to turn it over now to John Michael. So, thank you.
Wow. Give me a second. I'm a little speechless. The two of you are amazing, and I'm so humbled to be able to be here with you all. Just to give you a little idea, I found Survivors Corner through Donna after I watched her to give a speech, and I just knew I had to be connected somehow, and I'm so grateful to be here. Okay, one big deep breath. My journey started when I was 15 years old and competing internationally in springboard and platform diving. I was sexually abused by my coach, the medical team, and the professionals who sponsored and paid for me to compete. At the same time, they were helping my family with much needed doctor's appointments, medicine, and pro bono services. Financial hardships added to the continued abuse throughout my college years since the professionals were actively still supporting me. I thought I finally broke free from the professionals when I moved to Hollywood to pursue acting. However, since I never got the professional help I needed as a teenager, my behaviors repeated, and I found myself in other abusive experiences. I tried, and for the most part, to repress and hide the anguish I was experiencing and to represent myself as a successful actor, working on several soap operas, films, originated in many roles in New York City. Many studies have shown how survivors are re-victimized from outside sources such as families and doctors and churches and society. These past few days, literally the last couple of days, I have discovered that I have been re-victimizing myself. As we know, the CDC states that 1 out of 4 females and 1 out of 6 males are sexually abused, and that 93% of survivors know who their abusers were. Child sexually abuse victims have up to 2 to 3 times greater risk of adult re-victimization than those who have never had sexual abuse. The National Sexual Violence Resource Center states, negative long-term effects of CSA may be attempts to avoid or cope with negative emotional states, but that such emotional avoidance can create, challenge, and recognize, can help create challenges to recognize dangerous cues. As I was journaling these past couple of days, and I recognized that I was self-victimizing myself, I want to be clear that this is my own discovery and that I'm not in any way projecting this onto anyone else, but I wanted to be transparent as I possibly can. I recognize that I have attached meanings not directly to the traumatic events, but to the emotional and false self that I created after the events. As my undeveloped teenage mind tried to understand and comprehend why the sexual abuse continued to happen, I concocted an illustration of myself so that I could survive. I decided to believe that I was not good, smart, or worthy enough, or else these events would never have happened. I started a campaign to seek out implications and parts of conversations that I could adapt, adopt, interpret, download, transcribe, that would support and strengthen the belief of this false self. I discovered that I constantly, and most times unconsciously, resort back to these negative self-beliefs whenever I experience disappointment and fear in my present life. I am presently applying for jobs, and we've decided to go a different direction. I have immediately turned into a rejection and confirmed that I am not good, smart, or worthy enough. In the long process of creating this false self, I've lost my faith, trust, and true self through my constant actions of self-re-victimization. I still have this underlying feeling that I have everything that I need at the moment and that I am perfect as I am right now. I do not need to reach outside myself to try to be perfect, because that type of perfection is impossible and takes me out of the present and being patient and listening. I'm no longer in the now. But when faced with confrontations, I revert to the beliefs of the false self and start re-victimizing myself. If I could truly figure out how and when I defined my definition of victim and how I could create a false self, maybe I could start unraveling the connections that I had made. I want to recognize and accept that the traumatic events happened, and they happened to me. They were real and I did not make them up. I want to recognize the meanings that I have attached, adopted, adapted, interpreted, downloaded to develop the belief that I am not good, smart, or worthy enough. I accomplish this by not fully listening or reading an entire text message, but by filtering out sound bites or fragmented sentences that would reinforce this false belief. This negative and limiting self-talk has compounded by the belief and anger that I am alone. I felt abandoned by my family, my friends, and especially God. So I created reasons why these things happened to me. What is truly revealing and shocking is that there had to have been a moment within myself that I chose to believe this self-destructive belief. I had to literally allow these thoughts to penetrate, enter, and fester as a recipe for my false self. I want to recognize the shame and the guilt that I feel that derived from my fear of how people would react or think of me when they discovered my secret. I'm learning what extent secrecy has on my own self-worth, on my health, and my healing journey. Every day, I am discovering the long-term effects of sexual abuse. If I could work so hard to create a false self, why couldn't I reverse the thoughts and undo it by learning more about my true self? Anthony Robbins stated that people will only change when the pain of not changing is stronger and more uncomfortable than changing. If there is any pleasure within the situation, the person may remain and not change. So when I tried to tell my mother about the abuse, she didn't believe me, and she blamed me for that. If anything ever did happen, it was my fault. She also pointed out that I needed to do my part to help the family, and since the professionals were helping the family, I decided that such a small price to pay and that the benefits outweighed the pain. I also discovered the confusion of pleasure during these events. There was the pleasure of attention, the knowledge that I was helping my family, and the pleasure of touch. They told me I was beautiful, so I adopted the pretense and the fantasy that someone thought that I was important enough for just a few hours. I held strong to these pleasurable notions and tried to ignore the implications and the psychological effects that the damage did. And now, after in my life, I am discovering the pain of remaining in the influence of my false self, and the pleasures have dissipated. So, how do I do to change this? Here's a couple of things that I am working on since the last 2 days. Create a list of something you've accomplished and influential people that you've met and know. Take a moment and objectively, as if you are somebody else looking at someone else's life, and look at what they have done and who they have met. Allow yourself to reveal these accomplishments. Step 2, now take a moment and allow yourself to own the accomplishments. Allow yourself to be proud of these incredible achievements and take a moment to recognize how incredible these accomplishments truly are, especially if you are a victim or a survivor. Lastly, write yourself a card, a letter, or draw a picture celebrating one or all of the accomplishments you wrote down. Let yourself the freedom to illustrate it in a way you want to, design it the way you want to, use certain colors, certain scripts, whatever you want to decorate it with, and then write a message about how proud you are for what you've done. And then hang it somewhere where you could see it every day. Give yourself permission to be grateful and to celebrate. I feel the more I dissolve the negative and false self, the more my true self can shine through and the more I can trust it. This will make the world around me different. I will find the strength to be more present, patient, and listening in the present now. I will find my boundaries and honor them more, and the world around me will display more beauty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John Michael. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and your authenticity. I mean, it's been such a pleasure to get to know you over these past several weeks. I really appreciate you sharing.
Well, Donna, thank you. And I don't think this could have happened the last couple of days without this group of people that I've been coming to meet with and talk with and share with. They have contributed to this discovery for me. So thank you for this opportunity and introducing me to these amazing people. And if people out there need help, come find you.
Thank you so much, John Michael. And next we will hear from Kathleen. Kathleen is our program coordinator, and she's the one that leads our Speaking Out Safely workshops. And I've been working with Kathleen since 2017, and I learn something new from her at least weekly. Kathleen, go right ahead.
Thank you, Donna. And I just want to say that I am so honored to be able to lead these workshops. I can't tell you how much I get fulfilled every single week, and that just carries me through. So I want to say thank you to John and Kim and Tina, and thank you for Donna and Sean for helping out. And just the bond that we have, I'm so excited about it. I am also a survivor. I'm a survivor of incest, rape, torture, physical and psychological violence, and childhood sex trafficking. I am also a survivor of domestic violence and marital rape. In 2017, I came across an ad on Facebook about a workshop being offered to survivors of abuse on how to tell their story. I was in a place on my healing journey where I felt led to attend and see what it was all about. That first workshop was in the downtown library, and a lot has happened since then. I started telling my story because I am either going to talk to someone who has been through traumas like I have, and they need to know that they are not alone and there is hope. Or I'm talking to someone who hasn't been through the same kinds of trauma and will benefit from hearing about the lasting effects of trauma and what impacts it has on us and our families. At Survivor's Corner, we offer workshops for those who feel they are ready to tell their story. They may tell it to an audience, or they may tell it to a friend or family member. No matter who the story is being told to, it is important for the survivor to feel empowered and supported when telling their story. We offer that support along with the writing prompts and mindfulness and great discussions that lead us to feel more connected with each other. We want to create and sustain a bond that will hold us together as we continue to grow and heal from what we went through. We are also working to change legislation to boost our laws in the state to catch up with the predators using technology to harm children. These bills are specifically for crimes against children under age 12. Children who can't put into words what is being done to them and the feelings that go with these atrocities. Children living in fear and isolation. The traumas we are talking about touch all children, no matter what their living situation is. They are at greater risk of developing heart disease, diabetes, depression and anxiety, cancer, stroke, obesity, and many other diseases and disorders. They are hurting. Senate Bill 64 is a bill filed by Senator Alice Kerr raising the penalty for anyone convicted of procuring a child under the age of 12 for sex. Instead of the 1 to 5 years they currently get, they will be facing 5 to 10 years with having to serve 85% of their jail time. Senate Bill 64 passed the Senate and currently is waiting to be heard in the House. Another bill, House Bill 254, is another bill relating to the sexual exploitation of minors. This bill is to amend the law to raise the penalty for possession or viewing of matter portraying a sexual performance by a minor under the age of 12 to a Class C felony, and to raise the penalty for distribution of matter portraying a sexual performance of a minor under the age of 12 to a Class C felony for the first offense and a Class B felony for each subsequent offense. That bill is sponsored by Representative Derek Lewis and is making its way through the House. Support is needed, and if you feel inclined to call the legislative number in support of these bills, hopefully they will pass this session. As you can see, and as you have heard, making change is not easy, no matter what the change may be. Survivors Corner is committed to making that change on a personal, community, state, and national level. We know through our own lived experiences the pain of trauma, and we know the power of resiliency. We are not born resilient, we are made resilient, and Survivors Corner is promoting resiliency in our communities with the work that we are doing daily to ensure that the crimes committed against us does not define us. We are more than strong survivors. We are strong survivors. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kathleen. You know, when I had the idea to begin Survivors Corner back in 2017, it was really born out of my own personal journey. And having begun telling my own story back in 2016 with the hope of creating change, I realized at that point that there was not a supportive network for survivors to be able to come together. And even though we were really witnessing the Me Too movement begin to take off and people were being encouraged to share their experiences, without that underlying foundation of a social network and without that validation that comes with a support group type of format, sharing our experiences can definitely be re-traumatizing. And so it's always such an honor to be able to witness how well connected everyone that goes through these workshops becomes. And there's a genuine bond that forms between people as we share our experiences with each other. We start having those aha light bulb moments when someone shares something that makes us think, oh, yes, you know, that really resonates with me. And I think through that connection is really how that change is born, whether that's a change in our individual lives and our own healing, or whether that's the change that we carry forward to others as we begin casting that ripple out to our communities and ultimately to the policies and legislation that can really make a difference as well. And I think, you know, as you've heard from everybody today, I think we can sum it up by saying that the pathways to healing and wholeness are not linear. But abuse never has to be the end of our stories. And with that supportive social network, we can start experiencing validation and witness not only each other's survival, but also each other's emergence into a deeper healing of ourselves. And as we become stronger and healthier, we end up paving the way for others to do the same in turn. And I do think that that's how we end up breaking these cycles of abuse down and promoting that resilience. So thank you all very much for listening and watching. And if you have any questions or would like to connect with us, you can email us at resilientcommunity@survivorscorner.org or visit our website, survivorscorner.org. Thanks so much.